Just settling in and making any small adjustments to bring the body to ease. And a few deep breaths, perhaps in through the nose and out through the mouth, perhaps even making a sighing sound. And perhaps raising the shoulders on the inhale and letting the shoulders drop on the exhale. Inhaling, lifting the shoulders. Exhaling, allowing the shoulder blades to slide down the back. Inhaling, lifting. Exhaling, dropping. And bringing to mind a moment of joy or gratitude during your day, or perhaps a moment of joy or gratitude from the past. And bringing this moment to mind and allowing this moment to fill the body. And bringing attention to the feet. The feet as they are supported by the floor. And perhaps wiggling the toes back and forth. Feeling the air between the toes as you spread them. And feeling the toes touching again as they come back together. And bringing attention to the lower legs, rising up from the feet. And perhaps noticing where clothing touches the skin of the lower legs. Noticing how that feels. And bringing attention to the upper legs. The bottoms of the upper legs as they are supported and rest against the seat. And the tops of the upper legs. Noticing the difference in sensation between the bottoms of the upper legs as they rest against the seat and the tops of the upper legs. And bringing attention to the hips and the pelvis. the hips as they rest against the seat, feeling that support. And bringing attention to the spine as it rises up from the pelvis, reaching up to the neck. And the ribs. Noticing the ribs as they expand outward with each inhale and contract inward with each exhale. The ribs that are protecting the organs of the body, the heart, the lungs. And bringing attention to the tummy. And perhaps if it feels comfortable, placing the hands over the tummy with the fingers interlaced. Noticing the rise and fall of the tummy with each inhale and exhale. And feeling the fingers sliding apart on the inhale and coming back together on the exhale. And bringing attention to the collarbones, noticing the subtle rise and fall of the collarbones with each breath. And bringing attention to the shoulders, perhaps raising the shoulders lightly with the inhale, allowing them to drop with the exhale. Noticing the shoulder blades sliding down the back with each exhale. Bringing attention to the upper arms. Noticing the contraction of the ribs in and out against the inner upper arms. Noticing perhaps a difference in temperature of the inner upper arms as they touch the torso and the outer upper arms, and perhaps feeling a bit cooler. And bringing attention to the lower arms as they rest and are supported by the upper legs. And noticing the upper arms resting against the upper legs. The feel of clothing where the upper arms touch the upper legs. And the differences in temperature. And bringing attention to the hands. Perhaps they may be still resting on the belly or resting and supported by the upper legs. And bringing attention to the jaw and allowing the jaw to slide down gently. And close again. Perhaps exhaling as the jaw drops. Inhaling as the jaw closes and allowing the jaw muscle to relax. And noticing the mouth, the inside of the mouth, the tongue as it rests inside the mouth, the tip of the tongue touching the teeth, noticing the liquid that the tongue is resting in. And bringing attention to the eyes, and the small muscles around the eyes, and allowing those muscles to relax. And bringing attention to the forehead and allowing the lines of the forehead to smooth. And becoming aware of this body in this space, in this time. And perhaps returning your attention to the breath. And the breath at the belly. And perhaps noticing the breath as the ribs expand in and out. Or you may notice the breath at the nostrils. And the coolness of the breath on the inhale as the breath enters the nostrils. The warmth of the breath as it leaves the nostrils. perhaps even noticing the feel of the breath on the upper lip. Or you may notice the breath as it fills the body, every cell of the body on the inhale, and leaves the body on the exhale. And for the next few minutes, just noticing in the body, in the breath. And now it's time for a 10-minute cookie break. And I've seen the cookies, they look pretty good. So we'll come back at 7:41.
The theme of our Barbara's and my offering tonight is practice in attunement, responding wisely to what is. And it grew out of two things. One is it's part of the series that I'm doing on happiness, and in particular moral integrity. And also Barbara and I were talking about some of the challenges that we've had in our own practices, both of us, and how we've found ways to work with them. And so we, and especially Barbara, wanted to teach to that tonight. So moral integrity, I just want to do a little disclaimer at the beginning, because there's so much going on in the news and in the world that I just feel a little bit like, gee, we should be addressing some of that. We just celebrated Juneteenth yesterday, this way overdue, wonderful holiday of freedom for all beings, all people. There's information in the news today about anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans kinds of activities that are just very painful. And one could wonder what a personal spiritual practice might have to say about being engaged with some of these issues. And so I just want to acknowledge that question, because tonight we're going to be looking rather intimately at our own spiritual practice and our own inquiry, but it is not to the exclusion, quite the opposite, of engaged practice. And we'll talk later in the summer. Several of us are putting together a program later in the summer, more specifically about engaged spiritual practice and why and what that might look like. So I just want to kind of couch this intimate inquiry in a larger picture, because the intimacy isn't about creating a bigger and better self, a holier personal self, which is antithetical actually to our spiritual practice. Although we can sometimes kind of imagine that somehow my practice is about me and getting better somehow, but about cultivating the capacity to bring our wholehearted love to all beings in all circumstances, non-separation in all beings. So it's really, so as we cultivate these personal practices, it's about cultivating the capacity to be fully engaged in these kinds of social issues. And again, we'll speak to that a little bit more directly later in the summer. But I have heard it said that people say, well, you just, it's not what the Buddha taught. It actually, I'm so sorry, it actually is what the Buddha taught. One way that we address our own personal suffering is to, and especially with respect to moral integrity, and we've spoken to this before, that sometimes we can kind of think about morals or the bliss of blamelessness as kind of just getting really good at following rules. And that the challenge really is to develop our own skills so that we can dwell in love and compassion regardless of the circumstances. And who is it, Mike Tyson, who said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And we all know that place, don't we? You know, we all know the place where we go, oops, you know, my spiritual practice just completely went out the window when that person did X, or when I read that email, or when that news, that piece of news filtered across my screen. That when, you know, that something will get our brains and our nervous systems activated in such a way that our spiritual practice, and indeed any sense of moral integrity or the bliss of blamelessness, we kind of go unconscious to it. And so we wanted, Barbara and I have talked about this, and we wanted to address a little bit how we might inquire more intimately with that process, such that when those moments come, we have cultivated and can cultivate just a little bit more skill at slowing down and working with those moments, rather than just letting our brains and our bodies get hijacked by whatever the external circumstances. So that's where we're going tonight. And I want to start with a story. I'll just talk for a few more minutes and then Barbara will take over. I want to start with a story, and it's a true story that I offer as a bit of a metaphor. And the true story is that my neighbor's house burned down. And what happened was that there was this lovely birthday party, and they had a fire pit out in the backyard, and a lovely fire, and everybody sang happy birthday and ate cake, and it was all great. And then they all went home and everything was fine. And then a bit later, I think it was the next morning, the owner of the house cleaned out the fire pit, put all the ashes into a trash can, and put the trash can next to the house. And it turns out that they neglected to evaluate the state of the ashes, such that the ashes were still embers. And then, of course, they started to ignite whatever else was in the trash can, and then they ignited the garage, and then the garage ignited the house, and there we were. And the house burned down. They were able to save the cat. So I know that for many of us, that's an important piece of information. But we all know that place, don't we? Where something happens and we think we're all cool with it. But something happens and there were embers in our brains, in our bodies, that just went whoosh and got ignited. And we don't even necessarily know exactly quite what happened. We go into whatever our preferred mode of reactivity is, either fight or flight or paralysis and shut down, or taking care of people, whatever that is. So we know that experience of having embers that we might not have even known were there, and we didn't actually check them to see what the state was and what was needed to handle them well. And I think the metaphor that I want to offer you is, I think our moral missteps are kind of like that. You know, we can know in our minds that kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity are good things to cultivate. But there are times when our systems get overwhelmed with whatever it is that gets triggered. And the triggers are different for each of us. But we all have them. I was telling Barbara, I went to an ethics workshop for my psychology license last week, and the teacher made a specific point, because so we're having like 3 hours and we're talking about all the ethical things you should do as a therapist and all the ways that you mess up as a therapist. And the teacher said, I want to make this point. And she made it. And then she said, now it's so important, I want to say it again. So I'll just say it once to you. She said, we all will fail at this. I just love it. I just wanted to hug her, you know. So it's that the challenge really is to see our moral missteps, to see our failings, and to kind of inquire into what, where were the embers there that we missed, and that we either missed the embers themselves or we haven't yet fully cultivated skill at navigating that particular kind of circumstance. So we need to remember Buddhism as a very practical science or spiritual practice. It's not let's think up a bunch of rules or shoulds or even beliefs, but how does this life, these bodies, these minds, these social relationships, this beingness, how does it actually work? And we could notice that embers are not a problem. Embers just are embers. They just happen. You build a fire pit in the backyard and there are going to be embers. So it isn't that embers are a problem. It isn't that the way that our bodies and minds work is a problem. It's that, can we be aware of how things work and have some skill at navigating that particular circumstance really wisely. And we ordinary human beings can be quite inattentive to the ways that our minds are working in response to the experience of our bodies and our nervous system. I don't know about you, although I can actually pretty much guess because we're all so similar. But when something difficult happens, something unpleasant happens, the tendency for me, and I think for all of us, is for us to kind of try to get away from it. We try to navigate it by filling up the space quickly with something pleasant. We try to navigate it by just getting away from whatever it is that was unpleasant, including leaving, if you will, our own bodies and our experience in our bodies. Or we try to tell ourselves stories about what was going on. And so the mind, what we can do is very, very, very quickly move from this unpleasant experience into our minds where we start telling stories about it. Anybody recognize that one? Where something difficult happens, you get an email, somebody says something sharply to you in a store, somebody cuts you off in traffic, you read the day's news, and the mind starts to, if you will, burn the garage down. Huh? And furthermore, it's my and furthermore speech. Blah, 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 and then why didn't, and we should have, and they went tomorrow and the next time, and I should, and this is what's wrong with me, or better yet, this is what's wrong with you. That the mind starts to go wonky with the stories about it, and we are not so skilled at simply staying with our direct experience of it in the body, which is why Barbara led us through a body scan tonight, staying with it in the experience of the body, and then knowing wisely, how do I be with that? Again, embers aren't the problem. We just need to know what to do with them so they don't burn the house down. Why don't I stop there and you take over? Do you want this? You don't want that, do you? No. That's you. Yeah. Yeah. There we go.
I'm the middle envelope.
You're in the envelope.
I'm in the envelope.
All right. I will go sit down and be quiet. There you go.
Okay, and put my glasses on. I just want to talk a little bit about, when I first started my meditation practice, and I would go to these retreats, and they would talk about being in your body, being in your body. And I just would try and try and try and try. It took me years to even figure out how to do that. And then slowly I started being able to do that. And I started being able to recognize or understand the language of my body is how I think of it. And I feel that of all the things that I've learned in my practice, that has helped me the most. Learning how to pause is number one, and then being able to go within and recognize and hear that language of my body and what my body is trying to tell me. And that has saved me from a lot of unwise speech and unwise actions. Not always, definitely not always, but when I can pause and when I can go within and hear what my body's trying to tell me and listen to that and reflect on that, that is when I don't do things that I regret. I don't say things that I don't want to say. And on the other hand, it leads me to saying things that maybe I should say. So that's why I wanted to focus on the body tonight. Because getting in touch with my body is what guides me to the wholesome speech and action. So as Sharon and I were talking about this, and she brought up music, and I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with music here at IMCC. But we kept talking about it, and we thought that there might be a way that I could use music without words to help us connect with the body. So that is going to be the invitation tonight. It's a big experiment. I've never done this before, so it's going to be very interesting. So the invitation is that I am going to sing a 2-minute vocalization. There won't be any words. And I invite you to go within your body and do what we did in the body scan. Notice how the music is touching you and where it's touching you. What part of your body. You might even be able to notice temperature changes within the body. You might even get images that have colors or shapes. So the idea is to just listen, go within, notice without putting a story to it or without putting any concepts. So let's just settle in. Just take a few moments to bring the body to ease and perhaps a few big breaths. So, would anyone like to share what your experience was? Yes.
That was really beautiful, and thank you for that, first of all. It was very, very calming for me. It's interesting that the sound mixed with the observation of the body, there was no room left for anything else. So it was very full in that way. And for me, there were a lot of colors and textures that I could see, and movement too. So it was, I liked the, I shouldn't say I liked, but the contradiction between the lower and the higher was very interesting to observe the shift internally, how that made everything in my body feel different between the two spaces. Yeah.
Thank you. And did you notice specifically in your body, parts of your body where you felt more? Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the lower vocalization felt down more towards my diaphragm and lower. And then when you raised it, it almost felt like a whoosh, kind of coming up more into my lungs. My arms felt lighter, but with then the deeper, I just kept seeing red, like with the lower vocalization was very heart, like a heartbeat almost, that it would sink down and my body would sink more into the seat. And then the other was like, gossamer, going up higher in the body. Yeah, so it shifted.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share about their experience?
Hi, my name is Frank, and I've had the good fortune of getting to experience a lot of great music throughout time. I'm originally from Detroit, so we've had a lot of music, but I'm particularly a jazz fan. My family was jazz musicians and stuff. But anyways, this will be kind of hard to explain, but hopefully maybe make sense a little bit. I've had the opportunity to see some wonderful musicians, and one in particular that I got to see was one of Sonny Rollins' last performances before he retired. And when he came onto stage, he was pretty frail. He couldn't stand all the way up. He was wearing this lovely white silk shirt, and everyone was just happy to see him. And then he kind of, slowly waved his arm and waved to everyone. And then he put his saxophone in his mouth, and it was as if he had turned to 25 years old again. And my experience, and I've seen very fortunately many, but for the personal experience part of it, and this is where it gets kind of hard to describe and kind of getting lost in it, but not where for me, once you kind of get so transfixed in the moment, I kind of start to feel like I'm losing the edges of myself in the moment, where it's no longer where I feel so defined as an individual, so to speak. I kind of feel myself kind of get washed away a little bit. And that's always been some of my most spiritual experiences, if I want to call them that way, have been in those sorts of environments, and I've cherished those things. But that's always kind of where my body kind of goes, is not inward, but kind of just lets go, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share?
Maybe we could ask, since you and I both experienced difficulty with that, I just wonder if anybody had nothing happen, or if you got kind of lost in a story, or, sometimes when we look into our bodies, we go, nothing happened in there. Anybody notice that experience? Surely somebody did. Oh, Peter.
Right. I was so impressed with the first person who spoke, how many reactions you had. And I'm more like you, Sharon. I was enjoying the experience, and I would move with it, so that I was looking forward to the next change, and always enjoying going from the more bass to the higher play with music. So there was something happening, sure, but boy, to be that in touch with the body, I look forward to that in time, I hope.
Yeah. One thing that we can do in those moments is just to notice that we actually have one, and to notice what it feels like to not be able to feel it. To be kind of more like more up in my head, but to not actually be able to experience directly the experience of the body. That, by the way, is an experience of the body. To notice that I am not experiencing the body. So it's sort of like, well, what's that like? What's the emptiness like? What's the blankness like? What's the darkness like? Whatever, to be attentive there. And again, the point of all this would be that we can't behave well morally unless we know and are in tune with our experience. You could experiment with that. I just wanted to bring in just what it's like to not do this right.
All right. Well,
Yeah, this is, I sort of hesitated, but I really had a hard, when you were humming, or the closed mouth singing, It was beautiful, but the whole thing was beautiful, but it was very relaxing and resonant in my body. There was, I mean, my body was humming, mostly through my chest area. And then when you moved to the open mouth singing, I felt jolted. Actually, I was like, no. And, oh, sorry. Yeah. So I felt jolted by that. And then when you'd go back immediately, it was like, and I suspect it's just where I am today or right now or whatever. But I felt like no, I really wanted to have that sort of peacefulness and resonance. It felt really good.
Well, thank you so much for that because, like I said, this is a big experiment for me. And it's the first time I've done it. So I did think about certain, like the one that I just did was, I called it at ease. And so I thought, okay, what are vowel sounds? What are sounds that are, that put one at ease? And definitely, and I thought, but I really was very interested in hearing how you were going to experience it. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to try one more. Let's see, I'll do the bell. Oh, 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 hey, 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 oh, 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 So, would anyone like to share about their experience with this one, which Sharon and I hope that it would be a little more challenging? Susan Stone. Oh, you're muted. There you go. There you go.
Thank you, Barbara, for both of these. I found I had a really different reaction to both. And the first was very soothing. And this one felt like soul. It really reached down in a different place. But I also was seeing something else. Just today, I was listening to a comment by Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist. And his comment was that music happens between the notes. And what I saw, and he went to explain it, but what I saw was your reactions, Barbara. They touched me because it was like I was watching the music happening through you. You were an expression of what you were vocalizing. And I know on the first one, I just smiled when I recognized that. And this one was just a very different experience. I said, like soul, but I just watched it coming through you. And thank you.
Thank you. Jean Van Gemert.
Yeah, I wanted, can you hear me, Barbara?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. I just wanted to say I thought that was outstanding and that you should keep going with this. I mean, it was like with both of them, they felt way too short. So it's like, this is a real gift. Thank you.
So can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
Where did you feel it in your body?
Oh, pretty much all over. I felt it moving around. Probably between my knees and my head. You know, that was pretty much the territory. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Eliza.
Yes, Barbara, I felt that my body was being led in all these different places. That's what was so powerful, and particularly in the belly and the lower ones, and then it would move into the chest for the higher ones. And my body was so happy to be led in this way that it was very hard when it stopped. I didn't want it to stop. I just needed to keep traveling with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. Nancy Elizabeth.
So I was so surprised the first time, the very first sound that you made, and then you repeated periodically, that I felt vibration in my shoulders, on the outer edge of my shoulders, which I don't think I've ever noticed before. So I was fascinated by that. And there was such a difference between the first and the second one. The second one, I had a much stronger emotional reaction as well as physical. And the movement of the vibration in my body on the second one seemed much more flowing and in many places, moving all over, whereas the first one, it was more discreet. So I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone out here in?
This has been so great.
I'll just speak to the second one where I felt a lot of like a slicing of pressure on the left front, I guess, over the heart, and then a sense of almost breathlessness, as you went on, and a really strong feeling of emotion of immediately a sense of that your voice was singing something painful or heartbreaking, and that emotion grabbed me right away and wouldn't let go.
Thank you. Yeah, the second one I was trying to, well, Sharon and I agreed that the second one would be something that was more challenging emotionally, and I was trying to vocalize grief. Let's see, where are we with time? So thank you so much, all of you, for your openness and your willingness to try this out. And it's been really wonderful for me to hear your reflections. And I'm going to finish with a song that I wrote. Oh, but first I need a note. Gray skies, heavy with snow, emptying, emptying, tears cried from long ago, emptying, emptying, crescent moon behind her veil, with Venus faithfully guarding her as she sighs, slowly growing fuller. But a day, silver leaves drift down a stream, emptying, emptying, gathering yesterday's dreams, emptying, emptying. In the silence of my heart, the clouds ride out on the east wind. The clearing sky welcomes in each shining moment. Dea 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 de ba de de bo dea dea de dea de.